what I read, are trying to speculate or thinking that, okay, the same company built the hospital in St. Lucia, which is not usable. I think last week or the week before you mentioned this about the hospital in St. Lucia and what's the hiccup there. But can you verify a little bit exactly if this is the company that built a hospital in St. Lucia and what is St. Lucia's problem?
This is a comment that I've heard. As a matter of fact, the Prime Minister in St. Lucia is a friend of mine. Prime Minister Alan Chastanet, also comes from a tourism background. So I took the opportunity to contact the Prime Minister to speak to him about the hospital in St. Lucia. As a matter of fact, if I have the opportunity to go and to actually see the facility myself, I would do that, just again to give further insights into how to negotiate our contract. But in my conversations with the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, his indication was that the hospital was built to very high specifications, to European specifications, and that the equipment was of a technical level that actually they have a problem that their staff is not has not been properly trained to use the equipment, and that the main reason the hospital is not functional has nothing to do with the contractor, but has to do with the fact that the specifications of the equipment are of such a level that they have a problem with the staff to actually equip to run the hospital.
I'll leave that there. I go to another topic. Yesterday, and I know you're the Minister of Labor, and not only yesterday, but quite constantly, there are a number of OPCs, people all over the island, as much as now in Colby Hill, and I would say harassing tourists. Have you, as Minister of Labor, have any concerns about this? Did anything about this? At least ask the police or somebody to say, well, listen, these people are not working here legally. They're harassing the people that come here to pump money in our economy. Was there anything done? Do you have any concerns about the active OPCs on the island, both on Front Street and now in Colby?
Of course. Compliance is one of the points that we've been focusing on. The office is almost ready with a compliance guide, which is a guide for both employers and employees. This is across the different ministries. We've cooperated together to put together a guide to inform employers and employees as to what the laws are and what's expected of them. For sure, and I think many of the OPCs actually are French residents, or they live on the French side and working. Sorry?
European.
Okay, yeah, but residents on the French side. And as a matter of fact, this has been one of the discussion points with the French side in terms of, is there room for us to cooperate to make sure that some exchange of information, because some of these same people actually are collecting social premiums and benefits on the French side and then working under the table or under the radar on the Dutch side. So that's something that the French government also has an interest in. But in general, compliance is an issue. The labor inspectors are out on a regular basis. But these are people that are hard to find. I mean, you know that, because they dress as average tourists, and when they see officials come around, they don't have uniforms or shirts or anything like that, right? They look like tourists, and when they see officials come around, they disappear. They blend into the woodwork. So, but it is a concern, and the harassment of tourists. And this is a complaint I've heard on Front Street as well about some of the stores that have very aggressive sales techniques where they're harassing tourists that are walking by. And that's something that's also been pointed out to the inspectorate. So anything that takes away from people's ability to walk unharassed, and to enjoy their private time on the streets is something that has a concern of ours. And also the people working illegally and not contributing to our tax structure is obviously a major issue.
Thank you, Minister Lee. Minister Gibson, When you presented the last budget of 2016 and it was balanced, if I remember correctly, you said that you were going to try to have a team in place to actually control the spending on each ministry on a more maybe monthly or quite often, in order to make sure that the ministries stays in line with the monies that were allocated to them. Has that been done, and how is it going?
It's going well. In fact, we've spent less than has been projected because of that. So if the figures show that to date we've spent 9 million guilders less than was projected in the budget, and that helps to reduce the shortfall as far as revenue is concerned for 2016.
I think today the canine dogs are being certified. A building is going to be, the name of the building is going to be unveiled. We went last week to opening of the shooting range and the lab and so forth. Do you think that the ministry will have enough money to get these things up and running, and the dogs being protected and they're not being killed, by other dogs or anything like that? Do we have enough money for that?
I don't run all the ministries. The Minister of Justice, as far as that is concerned, is the man who manages what monies he has and what he can do with those monies. So I would suggest that you put that question to him as opposed to me. I cannot answer that at this point in time. I don't have the information.
Thank you.
Oita.
Thank you, Marcia. Minister Gibson, you just mentioned, just stated about the taxes owed by the hospital. Can you explain how much and how far back that those taxes
The
go?
estimate is about 7 million guilders that they owe. So a very substantial amount. Perhaps I should use this opportunity to also comment on a comment that has been made publicly, and that is that we're fighting to take money from GEBE to balance the budget. And I think I've mentioned this before, that the monies GEBE owes government was not incorporated in the projections for 2016, and whoever is contending that our attempt to collect what is owed to us by GBE is to be able to beef up the 2016 budget is inaccurate. Revenues that is owed to government by GBE were not counted in the revenues for 2016.
Just part of my question wasn't answered. How long does that 7 million go back to? What's the period over
That
which-
information I do not have, but it's
It's quite-
several years. So that amount has been outstanding, not the last 9 months, but several years. And hopefully, with the way we're approaching it, we can collect that 7 million.
Are there, or have you found other government or semi-government institutions that have a similar situation, that they owe government taxes and these taxes have not been collected?
Oh, there's a lot of government-owned companies that owe taxes, but they're considered current. With the exception of SMMC, that is not a major problem as far as the other government-owned companies are concerned.
Okay. Prime Minister Marlin, the official part of the elections have now started as of nomination day on Monday. Can you give an update as to the preparations for the elections, getting the ballot, checking out the ballot boxes, making sure the ballot paper has been ordered, etc., the technical parts of running an election?
Good morning to viewers and listeners. The technical parts are left to the election council, the council that runs the elections. The Prime Minister does not get involved in those things. There are people who, that is their job. It's just like, let's say, the police has their job to do. The Minister of Justice doesn't get involved in the job that they do. So we trust that they do their job, and it is their responsibility. It's just like you can see, while census and elections would fall under the responsibility of the Prime Minister, but the Prime Minister was not sitting here receiving any list of candidates and is not involved in the process as such. So I trust that, you know, those who are charged with their job, that they're doing their job correctly.
Prime Minister, on election day itself, and I'm not sure if that has been announced as yet, it falls on a Monday, of course. It's also a school day. Has a decision been made whether to make that an off day?
Historically, elections are always held on a school day, and the same that applied when elections were held on a Friday will now apply when elections are held on a Monday. So if elections, you know, several and many of the polling stations are in schools. So if Milton Peters College is a polling station, and Sundial School is a polling station, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, just like was the case when elections were on a Friday, the same will apply now that they're on a Monday. So we will have school on Friday, but we won't have school on Monday.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Alita. Maybe you had a question?
And with
Hi,
your
Mr.
indulgence, I came in and I sort of indicated that I, you know, wanted to get my 3 minutes of there, even if it was. Last week, I had a press briefing upon answering a question on the Integrity Chamber, if we have gotten any advice as yet. And I said, no, the advice was in the making. I just want for the record to correct that an advice was sent to the office and, you know, had not yet been seen by me. The advice, however, was not an advice on a new law. It was an advice coming from the department or from the Secretary General via from the Legal Affairs Department that basically said that, you know, the court case, the verdict was out, and by virtue of the verdict, the Integrity Chamber law, as approved in Parliament, became null and void. And if government wanted to proceed with drafting a new law, that decision, meanwhile, has been taken by the Council of Ministers. So the Legal Affairs Department is charged with drafting a new law, and that new law would have to take into account the indications given by the Constitutional Court as to their reason why they could not uphold the draft, or rather the law that was approved by Parliament. Also, yesterday the Council of Ministers decided to send the response from government to Parliament on the changes to the Constitution to stem the ship jumping, so to speak, to give, you know, listeners an idea of exactly which draft law we are talking about. The draft law to change the Constitution in connection with ship jumping. We've had reactions from the Kingdom Council of Ministers that were not too favorably looking at it, because they felt you were creating second-class members of Parliament, etc., etc. In the meanwhile, ever since then, we've had two teleconferences between our people and their legal people. The local chamber, Council of Advice, had also made some remarks and had some concerns. We have addressed all of these, and the law with our comments have now been sent to Parliament. So it is now up to Parliament to schedule a date for that public handling of that draft law to take place. Whether we will have a voting now on it before election or not is still yet to be seen. Everybody knows, we believe people know that in order to change the Constitution, you would need a 2/3 majority, so 10 votes. So even if the coalition votes for it and we do not get 2 votes from the opposition minimal to go along with it, it would not be accepted. But what I've also said in a radio interview yesterday, if the full 15 members of Parliament would vote to change the Constitution accordingly, it still requires the approval of the Kingdom Council of Ministers. And if they don't approve of it, then the law is null and void. This is one of the consequences of being in the constitutional makeup and framework that we are in, that in order to change your constitution, it requires the approval of the Kingdom Council of Ministers. During the discussions with the Dutch on their one of their concerns, we realized again that one of the things that I have been saying, and one of the concerns that I've had, is that the Dutch should not judge St. Martin wearing Dutch goggles, wearing Dutch glasses. You have to judge St. Martin in whatever it is doing or wants to do, based on its merits. St. Martin is not Holland. St. Martin is not Europe. St. Martin is a Caribbean country. St. Martin is a small country, and we have things that are specific to us. And one of the questions, concerns that he had was the issue of if you have a 2-man faction, like was the case of the Democratic Party in the case of the USP, how do you determine which of the 2 members of Parliament, let's say, stays with the party? Now, for us, it was a non-issue, and it did not make sense why that concern was raised by them. Because if you have 2 persons elected on the slate of a political party, and one of them jumps ship, as we call it here, if one of them leaves the party, if one resigns from the party and says, as of today, tomorrow, next week, I am independent, there is absolutely no question as to who left the party and who has stayed with the party. But one of the issues that you have playing in the Netherlands is that there was a party with a 2-man faction, and they had disagreements about an issue, and there was a back and forth between the 2 members of Parliament from the same party, to the point where they both demanded that the other one should leave the party. So it's like, you are not in line with the party, you should leave. And the other one is telling the leader of the party, you are not in line with the party, you should leave. So both now want to claim that the other one should leave, and we are saying no. You are elected in a party, and as long as you don't leave, you are a member of that party or a member of that faction. What has been customary in St. Martin ever since 2010 is that members would leave the party. And if you leave the party, you have left. One of the other things that we have been working on is the law to allow students to vote. So the change there as well, that would allow students to vote. So you're broadening the base of persons who can vote. And so far, you know, some of the comments that we have been receiving is you are discriminating. You're singling out a particular group. There are other St. Martiners, let's say, who were living in St. Martin and now have moved to Statia for whatever the reason, or somebody who is in Colombia for medical treatment during elections, and you are not allowing him to vote, or somebody who, because of their job, had to go to Miami for training, and he or she is not allowed to vote. That would bring us back to the whole thing of absentee ballot, when people could have used what they call, I forget how we call it. A proxy. You give someone a proxy to vote for you. We have been through that in the 1960s and 70s, and we had reasons to abolish it, put it behind us. It is not something we would want to bring back. But specifically here, the argument over the past years, and every basically political party, every delegation that went to Holland and spoke to students and whatnot would always tell you it is a pity that our students cannot vote, while they would love to. They are following everything. Some of them are right now, probably this is streaming live. I'm looking at it live, all live events on St. Martin. They follow, they read the newspapers online, but yet they are not allowed to vote. And for us, it is so important, because students are actually living in St. Martin, but because of their studies, it is not like somebody, well, who fell ill last week and they're gone to Colombia yesterday. But students are forced to write out of St. Martin in order to register in Holland. And one can say, well, you have a right to vote in Holland, but there's often no affinity with the Dutch politics. They don't get into it, and their future, for 90% of them, isn't in Holland. Their future is back here, and they want to be part of the process. So that too has now been sent to Parliament for us to have a debate on it. The youth employment program, we have received the advice from the SER, and that now is being responded to, and that too will go to Parliament soon. So all of these issues, we hope to have either a debate and a vote, or at least an initial debate in Parliament between now and September.
Thank you, Prime Minister Marlin, for those remarks in regards to your respective portfolios. Bibi, is there still a need for a question?
Yep.
Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Minister Gibson, you stated, based on the question my colleague asked you about how many years SMMC did not pay their taxes, and you said several years. Would the tax write-off the former minister applied when he was in office applied to SMMC?
Well, I do not understand what you mean by tax write-off.
The former Minister of Finance, when he was there, he made a ministerial biskicking to write off tax that owed, I think, before 2009 or something like that. Would that then apply to SMMC?
No. It only applies, as you said, for taxes owed before 2009. It does not apply for taxes owed from 2009 to date. So taxes owed from 2009 up to now has to be paid.